Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sonia's English podcast.
Thank you, Sonia. Today we're exploring the remarkable life and leadership of Caliph Umar ibn Khattab. May Allah be pleased with him.
Imagine being the most powerful person on the planet. Like, you control an empire that stretches from the deserts of Egypt all the way to the mountains of Persia.
Right, just a massive amount of territory.
Exactly. You have this unmatched military power. Wealth from all over the world is just, pouring into your capital city.
Yeah.
But then foreign diplomats come to meet you, and they can't find you in a palace.
Because you don't even have one.
Right. Instead, they find you sleeping on the dusty steps of a local mosque, wearing a cloak that is literally covered in patches.
It's such a wild image, right?
It really is. So today, we are looking at this ultimate paradox of power. We're going on a deep dive into a journey of total transformation.
Yeah, and that image alone really captures the essence of his character. I mean, we are looking at a man who began his public life as a really fierce, violent opponent of the early Muslims.
He was their biggest nightmare, basically.
He genuinely was. He was their most terrifying enemy. But then, through this really sudden and profound change of heart, he transformed.
But like a complete 180.
Exactly. He became one of the most just, visionary, and compassionate leaders in human history.
And it's a story that feels incredibly relevant right now for all of you listening. When we dive into his life, we are really examining universal themes.
Themes that still matter today.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about absolute justice. We're looking at a type of radical humility that, frankly, most modern leaders just cannot even comprehend.
Right, they wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah. And most importantly, we are unpacking this idea that true leadership is a heavy burden. It's a service to others rather than, just a privilege for the person at the top.
That is so true. And to really understand the magnitude of this transformation, we have to understand the world that built him.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So we have to travel back to the city of Mecca in the Arabian Peninsula. This is around the year 583 or 584 CE.
So quite a long time ago.
Yeah, a very different world. He was born into the Banu Adi clan, and that was a specific branch of the much larger, dominant Quraysh tribe.
And the Quraysh, they basically ran Mecca.
Right, exactly. They controlled the city, they controlled the major trade routes, and the Kaaba. That made them the most powerful group in the whole region.
So you'd think growing up in that kind of powerful environment, maybe his early life was one of comfort, like a life of luxury.
Oh, it was quite the opposite, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the environment itself was a harsh desert, and his own household was just as unforgiving.
How do you mean?
Well, his father, a man named Khattab, was known to be incredibly strict, like demanding to the point of being ruthless.
Wow, okay.
He forced his son to work out in the extreme heat of the desert, tending to the family's camels all day.
That sounds like back-breaking work for a young boy, just out in the sun constantly.
It was. And it was designed to be exhausting. His father would push him to his absolute physical limits.
No breaks allowed, I'm guessing.
None. If he showed any signs of tiredness or, if he made a mistake, his father would punish him severely.
That is so harsh.
It really was. But this brutal upbringing instilled a rugged, just unbending discipline in him from a very young age.
So he learned to just deal with it.
Right. He learned to endure physical pain and emotional hardship without complaining. He was basically conditioned to survive.
So if you combine that harsh desert environment with a father who demands absolute perfection, you end up with a very tough individual.
Very tough individual.
And he was famous for his physical presence too, right? Like, he was not a small man.
Oh, not at all. He was physically imposing. Historical accounts describe him as a towering figure.
Like, very tall.
Yeah, very tall and powerfully built. And in the culture of pre-Islamic Arabia, physical strength was highly valued for survival.
You kind of needed it.
Exactly. So he trained rigorously. He became an expert horse rider.
Yeah.
And he was actually a highly skilled, renowned wrestler.
A wrestler. Wow.
Yeah. When he walked into a busy market, people noticed him. He had this natural, intimidating authority about him.
I bet they did. But, here is the detail that I think completely breaks the stereotype of the muscle-bound desert warrior.
Right. The unexpected twist.
Yeah. Because among all these physical traits, he possessed a very rare intellectual skill. He could read and write.
And that is the detail that changes everything.
Why was that so rare back then?
Well, in the society of Mecca at that time, literacy was exceptionally rare. It was primarily an oral culture.
So people just memorized things.
Exactly. People preserved their history, their laws, and even their complex business agreements through spoken poetry and memory.
That is so much pressure on your memory.
Right. But he actively sought out an education. He learned to read and write. And that tells us that underneath that tough exterior, he had a really deep hunger for knowledge.
A hunger for structure, too, maybe.
Definitely.
So how does being literate in an oral society actually change the way a person thinks?
It changes how you process information. When you can read and write, you can analyze things objectively.
You can actually look at the words on a page.
Yeah, you can look at a written law or an agreement and see the pure logic in it. You are not just relying on emotions or like how well a storyteller performs.
That makes sense. It separates the facts from the feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It gave him a very analytical mind. Plus, he also traveled as a merchant.
Oh, where did he go?
He took trade caravans way up north to the Byzantine Empire and also to the Sassanid Empire in Persia.
So he saw the world.
He did. And while he didn't become, incredibly wealthy from trading, he observed things. He saw how massive, complex societies organize themselves.
So we have this really unique combination. He is a towering wrestler, highly disciplined. He has an analytical mind, and he has seen how foreign empires operate.
Right. It's quite the resume.
Yeah. And this unique skill set led him to hold a very specific high-pressure job within his tribe. He became their official arbitrator.
And this role is so crucial to understanding his entire life.
Explain what an arbitrator did back then, because ancient Mecca didn't really have a government.
Exactly. There was no central government. There was no police force, no formal courthouse. Society was just organized by tribes.
So if a crime happens, what do?
Well, that was the danger. If a person from one tribe stole from another, or if there was a violent disagreement, it could instantly spark a massive blood feud.
And those could last a long time.
Generations. It would just be a cycle of revenge.
So you really need someone to step in and stop the violence before it even starts.
Exactly.
But if there are no police, how do you enforce a ruling? Like, why would anyone listen to the arbitrator?
You enforce it through sheer personal respect and, honestly, a bit of fear.
Ah, right.
The disputing parties would go to the arbitrator, and they had to agree in advance to accept whatever decision he made. The Banu Adi clan held this traditional responsibility, and he became the man for the job.
I imagine they chose him because, well, nobody would dare argue with a giant wrestler.
Physical intimidation helped keep the peace in the room, certainly. But it had to be more than that.
Right. It can't just be threats.
No. They chose him because of his absolute brutal honesty.
Brutal honesty. I like that.
He had this massive reputation for hating injustice. He did not care about your wealth or your status or your family name.
So he couldn't be bought?
Never. If you were wrong, he would tell you directly to your face. He refused bribes. He refused to play political games.
So he was basically the ultimate no-nonsense referee.
That's a great way to put it.
Like a modern-day judge or a strict referee. The kind of referee who wouldn't hesitate to give a red card to the star player of the home team if it meant keeping the game fair.
Exactly.
People might not like him personally, they might even fear his temper, but they completely trusted that the game would be fair when he was on the field.
That captures his essence perfectly. He was rigid, he was highly opinionated, he had zero patience for foolish behavior.
But fair.
Fundamentally, at his core, he was obsessed with things being fair and correct.
Okay, so we have this strict referee who fiercely loves the traditions of his people, and then a massive disruption happens.
A huge disruption.
Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, begins sharing the message of Islam in Mecca.
Right.
It is a message of one God, of equality, of abandoning all the old idols. How does a man like him react to this new message?
His initial reaction was incredibly hostile. He viewed it as a catastrophic threat.
But wait, if he is obsessed with fairness, and Islam brings a message of equality where slaves and masters are equal before God, why would he hate it so much?
That is the big question. We really have to put ourselves in his shoes and look at the social fabric of Mecca at that time.
Okay, what was his perspective?
His entire identity was completely tied to the unity and the tradition of his tribe, the Quraysh. When the message of Islam arrived, it began to split families apart.
Because some would convert and some wouldn't.
Exactly. A son would accept the new faith, while the father kept the old ways. A wife would pray to one God, while her husband worshipped the tribal idols.
So to him, this wasn't just a peaceful theological debate.
No, not at all. It was the destruction of his community's unity. He didn't view the prophet's message as a spiritual awakening.
What did he view it as?
He viewed it as a dangerous rebellion, a rebellion that was going to tear his society apart.
And there was an economic factor, too.
Oh, absolutely. The Quraysh relied on the idols and the Kaaba to attract pilgrims and trade.
So it was their main source of income.
Exactly. The new religion threatened their economy, their social hierarchy, and their entire way of life.
So he felt like he had to protect his people.
Yes, he believed that to save his people, he had to completely crush this new movement.
And he didn't just write angry letters, did he? He took physical action against the early Muslims.
He became one of their most terrifying persecutors.
That is so hard to hear.
It is. He used his physical strength to intimidate them. He would humiliate them in public spaces. He would beat those who were in vulnerable positions.
Just trying to force them to give up.
Yeah, trying to break their spirit.
Yeah.
And force them to return to the old ways.
This is definitely the dark part of his history. The man of justice acting with extreme cruelty.
It really is a stark contrast.
But, earlier you mentioned his analytical mind.
Yeah.
Is it possible that his extreme anger was actually a mask for something else?
What do you mean?
Well, often when people fight violently against a new idea, it's because they are secretly struggling with it internally. Like the cognitive dissonance makes them lash out.
That is a very deep and honestly very accurate psychological reading of the situation.
Because secure people don't usually act like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When a person is completely secure in their beliefs, they do not usually need to resort to public torture to prove their point.
Right.
And the message of the Quran was powerful. It spoke directly to logic and to the heart. He was a highly intelligent man. He heard the verses being recited in the city.
He couldn't just ignore them.
No. It is highly probable that the truth of the message was already challenging his intellect.
So the violent reaction was just
a desperate attempt to silence his own internal doubts.
Wow, he was trying to smash the mirror because he didn't like the reflection.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
And this internal pressure just kept building and building until it finally exploded. Which brings us to the year 616 CE.
Yes, a pivotal year.
Walk us through this specific day, because when I read this, it plays out like a tense scene in a thriller movie.
It really does.
Yeah.
So the persecution was not working. The Muslims were holding on to their faith. The social division in Mecca was just getting worse.
Everything was boiling over.
And he reached a breaking point. In the middle of the scorching desert heat, he made a radical, violent decision.
What did he do?
He strapped on a sword. He stepped out into the streets, just boiling with anger. He decided to bypass all the followers and go straight to the source.
Oh, no.
He was going to assassinate Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
So he concluded that murdering the leader was the only mathematical way to restore the unity of his tribe.
Yes. Cut off the head, and the movement dies. The tribe goes back to normal. That was his logic.
But things don't go according to plan.
No. While he was marching through the streets with his sword, visibly enraged, another man saw him.
Just a random person?
Well, this man was secretly sympathetic to the Muslims, and he stopped him and asked where he was rushing to in such a fury.
Wait, if you see a giant angry man with a drawn sword, you usually get out of his way.
True. But this man took a massive risk to distract him.
Because he knew what was about to happen.
Exactly. When he openly stated his plan to kill the prophet, the man knew he had to divert him immediately.
So what did he say?
He hit him with a piece of information designed to completely shock him. He said, "Before you go and fix the leadership of the city, why don't you return to your own house and set that straight first?"
Oh, wow. What an incredible manipulation of his pride. He's basically telling the strict referee that his own team is breaking the rules.
Precisely.
So what did the man reveal?
He revealed that his own sister, Fatima, and her husband had secretly accepted Islam.
His own sister. The strict enforcer of tribal law suddenly realizes the rebellion is sitting in his own living room. The shock must have been immense.
He was absolutely livid. He completely forgot his original destination. He turned right around and marched straight toward his sister's house.
Okay, take us to that moment at the door. He arrives. He is furious. What does he hear?
So, as he gets close to the house, he hears a strange, rhythmic sound coming from inside.
What was it?
They were reciting something. They were reading verses from the Quran, specifically a chapter known as Surah Taha.
And they weren't alone, were they?
No, they had a teacher with them, helping them memorize the words.
So he hears the very words he is trying to destroy coming from his own family's house. Does he knock?
He bursts into the house. The people inside absolutely panicked.
I can imagine.
The teacher hid, and his sister tried to quickly conceal the written pages under her garments.
But it was too...
He demanded to know what they were reciting. He asked them directly if they had abandoned the religion of their forefathers.
This is the moment of truth for his sister. She knows his temper. She knows he has a sword.
It is. And yet, her husband stood up to him.
Wow, brave man.
But he immediately attacked his brother-in-law, throwing him to the ground. When his sister Fatima rushed in to pull him away and protect her husband, he, in his blind rage, struck his own sister across the face.
He hit her hard enough to cause an injury, right?
He hit her so hard that she fell, and blood began to pour from her face.
That is awful.
But instead of crying or backing down, Fatima looked right up at him. She boldly declared, "Yes, we are Muslims. We believe in Allah and His messenger. Do whatever you want."
Do whatever you want. That takes unimaginable courage.
It really does.
But let's focus on his reaction here. He is a man obsessed with justice and fairness. He looks down and sees his sister's blood on his own hands. What happens in his mind?
The cognitive dissonance you mentioned earlier finally breaks him.
It shatters.
Seeing the blood of his own sister, caused by his own unjustified anger, it acted like a bucket of freezing water.
Waking him up.
The fierce anger suddenly drained away, replaced by an overwhelming wave of guilt and shame. He realized in that instant that his actions were not heroic at all. They were barbaric.
He went too far, and he knew it. The referee just realized he was the one cheating.
Exactly.
So the violence stops. What does he say to her?
His entire tone shifted. He spoke softly. He asked her to hand over the pages they were reading.
He wanted to see what was so powerful.
He wanted to see the words that gave her the courage to stand up to his violence.
But she doesn't just hand them over, does she? Even after being struck, she sets a boundary.
She was incredibly firm. She told him that these were pure words. She told him he was currently in a state of impurity because of his anger and his idol worship.
Wow. She is giving orders to him now.
She instructed the most terrifying man in Mecca that if he wanted to touch the pages, he had to go and wash himself first.
And he obeys her.
He does.
This massive, intimidating man humbles himself, walks away, and washes. Then he comes back for the pages. Now, let's remember the crucial detail from his childhood. He can read.
Yes, he doesn't need anyone to interpret this for him.
That is why his literacy is so vital to him.
It changes everything here. He took the pages. He began to read Surah Taha.
What did those verses actually say?
Well, they don't talk about war or tribal politics. They talk about the supreme oneness of God. They talk about the beauty of the heavens and the earth, the delicate balance of creation, and the infinite mercy of the Creator.
And he is reading this with that sharp analytical mind of his.
Yes, and because he loved Arabic poetry and literature, he immediately recognized that the linguistic structure of these verses was impossible for a human being to invent.
It was beyond human capability.
The absolute clarity of the message shattered his remaining doubts. As his eyes moved across the page, his heart completely transformed.
Didn't he actually say, "How beautiful and noble are these words"?
He did. The switch was flipped.
Instantly.
Instantly. He asked where the prophet was located. He wanted to go to him right away.
Wait, he still has his sword though, right?
He kept his sword, yes, but this time his intention was entirely different.
He heads to a place called Darul Arqam. This was the secret safe house where the early Muslims gathered, right?
Yes, they were hiding there to escape persecution.
Okay, just imagine the scene inside that house. One of the companions looks out a crack in the door and sees this man striding toward them, fully armed with his sword.
Panic erupted inside. They thought this was the end.
They thought he was coming to finish the job, but the prophet tells them to open the door, right?
He did. The prophet allowed him in. And right there, in front of the people he had tormented for years, he declared his belief in one God and in the prophethood of Muhammad.
Wow.
He formally accepted Islam.
You know, we often hear about people converting to a new belief, and it is a quiet, personal moment.
Right. Very private.
But his conversion was not a private affair. How did this single event change the mechanics of the entire Muslim community in Mecca?
It completely inverted their social standing overnight.
Really? Just because of one person?
Yes. Before him, they were a vulnerable underground movement. They could not worship publicly without being attacked.
All right.
But he was not a man who hid. When he accepted the truth, he believed it should be proclaimed.
He essentially walked out of that house and put his own formidable reputation in front of the community as a shield.
Precisely. He went to the leaders of the Quraysh and publicly announced his new faith.
That must have shocked them.
Oh, deeply.
Yeah.
He challenged anyone who wanted to harm the Muslims to deal with him first.
And did anyone take him up on that offer?
No. Because of his physical strength and his tribal status, the Quraysh were paralyzed. They did not want to fight him.
The psychological impact of that must have been massive for the believers. The man who was their nightmare suddenly became their greatest protector.
Emboldened by his support, the Muslims did something they had never dared to do.
What was that?
They left their secret houses. They formed two lines, one led by him and another led by another strong companion, Hamza. and they marched openly through the streets of Mecca to the Kaaba.
Out in broad daylight.
Yes, they prayed there in public for the very first time.
And what did the leaders of Mecca do?
They could only stand back and watch in stunned silence.
That is a cinematic turning point, just an incredible visual. So now, after this dramatic shift, he becomes a leading member of the community. What does his relationship with Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, look like over the next few years?
They developed a profound, unbreakable bond. He became one of his closest companions and chief advisors.
He was there for everything.
He was present during all the major struggles, the migration to Medina, and the formation of the new society.
Now, when we think of a chief advisor in history, we often picture someone who just, nods and agrees with the leader to maintain favor.
A yes man.
Right, a yes man. Was he a yes man?
Not in the slightest. His obsession with truth and fairness remained entirely intact.
So he would argue.
He was deeply respectful, but he never agreed just for the sake of harmony. If a decision was being discussed, he would state his opinion plainly.
Even if he disagreed with the prophet?
Yes. If he disagreed, he would present his arguments logically and passionately.
This is such an important concept for modern organizations, I think. Today, we call this role a sounding board or a challenger.
It's a very necessary role.
It is. If you are a leader, whether in business or government, the most dangerous environment is an echo chamber where everyone just tells you how brilliant you are.
You stop seeing your own mistakes.
Exactly. You need that one person who has the courage to say, I think this is a mistake, and
A true advisor protects the leader from blind spots.
Right.
And the prophet created an environment of deep psychological safety where companions felt comfortable speaking their minds without fear of being punished for dissenting.
And he valued that honesty.
The prophet valued his input immensely because he knew there was no hidden political agenda. He only cared about what was right.
And because of this extraordinary ability to cut through the noise and identify the truth, the prophet gave him a very specific title.
He gave him the title al-Farooq.
Al-Farooq. For all of you listening who do not speak Arabic, what is the exact meaning of that word?
It means the distinguisher.
The distinguisher.
Specifically, the one who perfectly distinguishes between right and wrong, truth and falsehood.
That implies a sense of absolute clarity.
It does. When things were confusing or morally gray, he was the one who could draw a sharp line and say, this side is right and that side is wrong.
The distinguisher. It is a beautiful title, but it also sounds like a very heavy responsibility.
It's an immense burden.
Let's fast forward in history a bit. The prophet passes away, leaving the community in deep grief. Abu Bakr becomes the first caliph, guiding them through a very turbulent.
Yes, a very difficult transition.
But as Abu Bakr nears the end of his life, a new leader must be.
Abu Bakr recognized that the state was growing rapidly, and it required a leader with an unshakable sense of justice and really strong administrative skills.
So he looks to al-Farooq.
After consulting with the senior members of the community, Abu Bakr nominated him to succeed him as the second caliph.
Now, was he campaigning for this position? Did he want the power?
He absolutely did not want it.
Really? Most people would jump at the chance to be a ruler.
He was a deeply reluctant leader. When you understand his mindset, you understand why. He did not view the caliphate as a prize or a promotion.
What did he view it as?
He viewed it as a terrifying burden. He believed that holding power meant he would face a severe interrogation by God on the day of judgment for every single thing that happened under his watch.
That's terrifying.
But the community insisted. They knew they needed the distinguisher.
So in the year 634 CE, he accepts the role.
Yes, he becomes the ruler.
And over the next 10 years, the geographical map of the world completely does.
It was one of the most rapid and successful expansions in human history.
Where did they expand?
Under his leadership, the Islamic State defeated the mighty Sassanid Empire of Persia, absorbing it entirely.
That was a huge superpower back.
Huge. And they also pushed back the Byzantine Empire, taking control of massive territories, including Syria, Egypt, and Palestine.
Okay, this brings us to a huge puzzle for me. Historically, when a state expands that quickly, it collapses from the inside.
Right. It's too much too fast.
Yeah, you are suddenly conquering centuries-old empires. You are absorbing millions of new people who speak different languages, use different currencies, and have completely different cultures.
It's an administrative nightmare.
So how did he not lose control? How did he manage this without any modern communication? There were no telegrams, no internet, no rapid transit. How do you govern a sprawling empire from a small desert city like Medina?
This is where his analytical mind truly shines.
Okay, explain this to us.
He was an absolute administrative genius. He realized that you cannot govern a vast, multi-ethnic empire using the casual methods of a small tribal village.
You need systems.
You need formal systems.
Let's break those systems down. For anyone interested in management or history, this is fascinating. What was his first major structural change?
First, he decentralized the daily operations.
Meaning he didn't try to control everything himself.
Exactly. He divided the newly conquered territories into distinct administrative provinces known as wilayat.
Okay.
He did not try to micromanage the streets of Damascus or Egypt from Medina. Instead, he appointed highly capable governors to run each province.
Okay. Delegating authority is a standard management practice today. But here is the risk. If you give a governor total control over a distant, wealthy province like Egypt, what stops that governor from turning into a corrupt local king?
That is the classic problem.
How did he keep them in check when it took weeks for a horse rider to deliver a single message?
He established mechanisms of extreme accountability.
Like what?
First, he created a strict written code of conduct for every governor. When a governor took office, his personal wealth was recorded.
Oh, wow. They wrote down exactly what he owned.
Yes. If his wealth mysteriously increased during his time in office, he was investigated and the excess was confiscated.
A mandatory asset declaration in the 7th century? That is brilliant.
Yes. Furthermore, governors were forbidden from adopting the luxurious lifestyles of the kings they had just defeated.
So they couldn't live in palaces?
No. They could not wear fine silk clothing. They could not keep expensive guard dogs. And most importantly, they were forbidden from placing guards at their doors.
Wait, no guards?
The door of the governor had to be open to the poorest citizen at all times.
That is amazing. But again, how do you enforce that from hundreds of miles away? If the governor closes his door, how would the Caliph in Medina know?
He used the annual Hajj pilgrimage as a supreme audit tool.
How did that work?
Every year, all the provincial governors were required to travel back to Mecca for the Hajj.
Okay.
And he made a public announcement across the entire empire. Any citizen from any province was invited to come to Mecca and publicly state their grievances against their governor directly to the Caliph.
That is brilliant. He created a decentralized feedback loop.
Exactly.
If a governor in Syria was acting like a tyrant, the citizens knew they had a direct, protected channel to complain to the top leader once a year.
And the governors knew it too. And he also employed independent inspectors.
Secret shopper.
Basically, he had a trusted network of auditors who would travel unannounced to the provinces, acting as regular citizens, to observe how the governor was treating the people.
And if they caught a governor breaking the rules?
If a governor violated the code, he would immediately remove them, no matter how politically powerful they were.
So he solves the political organization, but how do you create a unified identity? You have Arabs, Persians, and Egyptians now living under one banner.
To unify the state conceptually, he introduced the Hijri calendar.
Why a new calendar?
As the empire grew, administrative documents were getting confused because different regions used different local events to track the years.
Like saying the year of the big earthquake or the year the king died.
Right. And you cannot run a global bureaucracy like that.
It would be a mess.
So he gathered his advisors. They decided to establish a unified system of time. They chose the year of the Prophet's migration from Mecca to Medina the Hijra as year 1.
That makes sense.
This gave all the diverse people of the empire a single shared historical timeline.
Okay, we have provinces, we have a calendar. Now for the most complicated part.
Always the most complicated part.
With massive conquests comes massive wealth. Tons of gold, silver, and resources are flowing into the state. Before his leadership, how was war booty typically?
Traditionally, when a battle was won, the wealth was simply divided up and handed out to the soldiers on the spot.
But if you do that with an entire empire...
He realized that if they kept doing that with the wealth of entire empires, a few soldiers would become ridiculously rich, and the rest of society would starve.
It would create massive inequality overnight.
Huge inequality.
So he institutionalized the wealth.
Yes. He firmly established the Bayt-ul-Maal, which translates to the House of Wealth or the public treasury.
So the money goes to the government, not the individual.
He decreed that the massive lands and resources conquered in places like Iraq and Egypt did not belong to the soldiers. They belonged to the state, to be held in trust for the public good and future generations.
That is a massive shift in economic philosophy.
It completely changed how wealth funds.
But how on earth do you organize the distribution of that wealth to the public without a computer database?
He created an innovation called the Diwan.
The Diwan. What is that?
This was a monumental administrative undertaking. The Diwan was a massive written registry.
using his appreciation for literacy and records again.
Exactly. He ordered a census. They wrote down the names of the citizens organized by tribes and families.
Like an ancient spreadsheet.
Exactly like a spreadsheet. The Diwan recorded to the Diwan serving in the military, who was a civil servant, and who belonged to different categories of society.
And what did that allow them to do?
This allowed the state to pay regular, systematic salaries and pensions, rather than just handing out random piles of silver.
And this brings us to what might be his most revolutionary achievement.
Yes.
By using the treasury and the Diwan registry, he effectively established one of the very first formal welfare states in history.
It is truly staggering when you consider the time period.
The concept of a welfare state means the government acknowledges a duty to provide for the basic living needs of its vulnerable citizens.
Right, and under his system, the state provided regular stipends, financial allowances for the elderly, the disabled, the poor, and widows and orphans.
A universal basic income for the vulnerable, calculated and distributed through a massive written registry.
In the 7th century.
It's mind-blowing. Now, did this financial protection only apply to the Muslims?
No. And that is where his sense of justice truly transcends tribal or religious boundaries. The welfare stipends were provided to citizens of the state regardless of their faith.
Really? Do we have examples of that?
We do. There's a very famous, well-documented historical account that proves this policy.
Tell us the story.
He was walking in the city one day and saw an elderly, blind man begging at a door.
A beggar on the street.
Yes. He gently tapped him on the shoulder and asked him which community he belonged to. The man replied that he was Jewish. He asked him why he was begging in the street. The elderly man explained that he needed to gather money to pay his taxes to the state and also to buy food to survive his old age.
The strict referee hears that a blind old man is forced to beg just to pay the state. How does he react?
He was deeply moved, and he immediately felt the burden of responsibility.
Because he's the leader.
Right. He took the man by the hand, brought him to his own home, and gave him some food.
That's nice, but it doesn't solve the bigger problem.
Exactly, and he knew that. He didn't stop at a personal act of charity. He sent a message to the keeper of the public treasury.
What did the message say?
He ordered them to establish a permanent daily stipend for this man and all others in his situation.
He literally changed the policy right there.
Yes. He explicitly stated, "By God, we are not being fair if we consume his youth and then abandon him in his old age."
Wow.
He canceled the tax for the elderly and disabled non-Muslims and ordered that they be supported by the state treasury.
You know, that is the difference between charity and justice.
Say more about that.
Well, charity is giving a beggar some food. Justice is changing the government policy so the beggar doesn't have to beg anymore. He guaranteed rights.
Beautifully said.
And he did this on a larger scale regarding religious freedom too, correct?
Yes. His approach to religious freedom was highly structured.
Give us an example.
When the Muslim armies took control of Jerusalem, the Christian patriarch, Sophronius, refused to hand the keys of the city to anyone except the Caliph himself.
So he wanted the top boss.
Exactly. So he traveled all the way to Jerusalem. But he didn't arrive with a massive army of guards wearing a crown.
How did he arrive?
He arrived with one servant sharing a single camel. They were taking turns riding it.
Wait, the leader of the empire taking turns walking in the dirt so his servant could ride?
Yes. And the patriarch was absolutely astounded by this humility.
I can imagine.
He signed a treaty guaranteeing the protection of the Christian churches, their crosses, and their right to worship freely without harassment.
And what about the Jewish community?
Under previous empires, Jewish people had been completely banned from living in Jerusalem for centuries.
Right, they were exiled.
He reversed this. He invited Jewish families to return, live in the city, and worship freely.
He protected their humanity. He clearly viewed power as a tool to protect people, not to elevate himself.
Absolutely.
This leads us to a quote of his that is widely studied today. It is a terrifying statement about accountability. Let's unpack the famous quote about the dog.
It perfectly summarizes his entire internal psychology.
What does he say?
He famously said, "If a dog were to die hungry by the riverbank, I would fear that Allah would ask me to account for it on the day of judgment."
Let's really think about the logistics of that statement for a second. If a dog were to die hungry.
Just a stray dog.
This man is managing the geopolitics of a massive empire. He is dealing with armies, governors, and the treasury, and yet his mind is focused on a stray animal walking near a river miles and miles away.
The level of empathy is unmatched.
He truly believes that his authority is so total that even the hunger of a stray animal is a systemic failure of his leadership.
It is an agonizing level of self-reflection.
Yeah.
He believed that if he claimed the right to rule the land, He was responsible for everything that suffered on that land.
That is why he could not sleep peacefully. He felt this heavy weight constantly.
He did.
Now, it's easy for leaders to say poetic things about responsibility, but did he actually put this into practice? How did he check if people were hungry?
He literally walked the streets to find out.
Himself?
Yes. This is the origin of his famous night patrols.
Okay, tell us about these.
After managing the affairs of the empire all day, he would disguise himself at night. He would cover his face and walk through the streets and outskirts of Medina, often accompanied by a single assistant.
Why hide his identity? Why not just send his inspectors?
Because he understood human nature. If a governor or a citizen knows the Caliph is watching, they behave perfectly.
They put on a show.
Exactly. They hide their struggles. They clean the streets. He wanted to see the raw truth of his society when no one was performing for him.
He wanted to catch the failures of his own government.
Yes.
There is a specific story from one of these night patrols that illustrates this perfectly. He finds a woman sitting by a fire.
Yes, a very famous incident. He and his assistant were walking on the outskirts of the city and saw fire in the distance.
So they walked over.
They approached quietly and found a widowed mother sitting with her young children. The children were crying bitterly from hunger.
Oh, okay.
And there was a pot of water boiling over the fire.
What was she cooking?
He stepped forward and asked her what was happening. Not knowing she was speaking to the Caliph, the woman explained that she had absolutely no food.
So what was in the pot?
She was just boiling water with stones in it.
Stones?
She was trying to trick her children into thinking food was coming, hoping they would eventually just cry themselves to sleep.
Wow. That is just so incredibly sad. Did she blame anyone for her situation?
She specifically blamed him.
What? She blamed the Caliph.
Yes. She said, "May God judge between us and Umar. He is our leader, yet he has neglected us."
Oh my goodness. The ruler of the empire just heard a starving citizen pray to God against him?
Face to face.
How did he react? Did he get defensive? Because a lot of leaders would just make excuses or say it's not their fault.
He was horrified. He didn't reveal his identity or make any excuses. He immediately ran all the way back to the state treasury in the center of the city.
Just took off running.
Yes. He loaded a large sack with heavy flour, grain, and cooking fat.
And I assume he told a servant to deliver it to her.
No, he bent down to pick it up himself.
The Caliph.
Yes. His assistant immediately stepped forward and said, "Let me carry this burden for you, O Commander of the Faithful."
Which is a normal thing for an assistant to do.
Exactly. But his response was sharp and profound. He looked at his assistant and said, "You can carry my burden for me today in this world, but who will carry my burden for me on the day of judgment?"
Wow. He refused to outsource his responsibility.
He physically hoisted the heavy sack onto his own back. He walked all the way back to the camp.
He carried it himself.
He did. And he personally cooked the food for the woman and her children. He sat back and watched until the children started laughing and playing, their hunger satisfied.
Did he tell her who he was?
Only then did he reveal who he was. He apologized to the woman and ensured she received a regular stipend from the Diwan the very next day.
That is the definition of a servant leader. He literally used his own back to carry the weight of his people.
It's an incredible standard of leadership.
It really is. And when we look at leadership today, there is such a massive disconnect. Modern leaders often isolate themselves in luxury.
They really do.
They travel in private jets, surrounded by security, totally cut off from the daily struggles of regular citizens. He was governing a superpower, but he remained deeply connected to the street level.
His personal lifestyle remained austere even as the state became incredibly wealthy.
He didn't live in a palace.
He refused to build a palace. He lived in a simple mud brick house. We talked earlier about the patches on his clothes.
Right, the patched cloak.
This wasn't just a fashion statement or a political prop.
Yep.
He genuinely wore clothes that were torn and repaired multiple times.
Which must have been incredibly confusing for foreign ambassadors. You mentioned earlier the image of him sleeping on the ground. Tell us about the Persian envoy who came looking the king.
Yes, a prominent envoy from Persia arrived in Medina. Now, he was expecting to find guards, grand halls, and a king draped in silk.
Because that's how Persian kings lived.
Exactly. So he asked the locals, "Where is your king?" They replied, "We have no king. We have a caliph, and he's over there."
Where was he?
They pointed to a man sleeping under the shade of a date palm tree, resting his head on a simple brick, completely unguarded.
Just taking a nap outside. The envoy must have thought it was a trap. How could the ruler of an expanding military power sleep outside without security?
The envoy stood over him, taking in this incredible sight. He reportedly uttered a phrase that went down in history.
What did he say?
He said, "You have ruled justly. so you are safe, and thus you can sleep. Our kings have ruled tyrannically, so they live in fear and need guards.
That gives me chills. You have ruled justly, so you are safe. His justice was his armor.
It was his only armor.
And he applied that justice equally. Often, we see leaders who are strict with the public but let their own families get away with crime. Did he offer any special privileges to his?
Absolutely none. He was actually stricter with his own family than anyone else.
Really?
Yes. He told his relatives that if they broke the law, their punishment would be doubled because people were looking to them as an example.
And he was tested on this, wasn't he? Regarding his own son?
Yes. In a deeply painful incident, his own son was found guilty of consuming alcohol in Egypt, which is strictly forbidden in Islamic law.
What happened?
The governor of Egypt, trying to respect the Caliph, carried out the legal punishment privately.
Trying to spare the family the public embarrassment.
Right. But when he found out, he was furious. He demanded his son be brought back to Medina.
He didn't sweep it under the rug to protect his political image.
No. He publicly enforced the law on his own flesh and blood.
That is intense.
He demonstrated to the entire empire that the law is a straight line. It does not bend around the Caliph's family. The poorest citizen and the Caliph's son stand on equal footing before justice.
That takes an immense psychological toll on a father, but it builds unbreakable trust with a nation.
Unbreakable trust.
Another trait that builds trust is the ability to admit when you are wrong. A leader with a massive ego cannot handle being corrected, especially in public.
He actually welcomed correction. He actively encouraged his citizens to hold him accountable.
Is there an example of that?
There is a very famous incident regarding marriage dowries.
Okay.
He was standing in the mosque giving a public address. He noticed that the amount of money being asked for marriage dowries was getting excessively high, making it difficult for young men to marry.
So, acting as a practical administrator, he wanted to step in.
Yes, he suggested putting a legal cap on the dowry amount.
A price ceiling, essentially. Seems like a reasonable economic policy to help young people.
It made logical sense at the time. But suddenly, a regular woman from the congregation stood up and interrupted the most powerful man in the world.
Just right in the middle of his speech?
Yes. She loudly challenged his policy. She quoted a specific verse from the Quran that explicitly permitted women to receive large amounts of wealth as a dowry if it was agreed upon.
So she told him his policy was un-Islamic.
She basically said, God gave us this right. Who were you to take it away?
A regular citizen publicly correcting the supreme commander. In many ancient empires, she would have been arrested immediately for treason or disrespect.
Without a doubt.
What did he do?
He stopped his speech. He listened to her argument carefully.
Did he argue back?
No. He quickly realized that her knowledge of the law in this specific instance was sharper than his own. He didn't try to save face. He didn't make excuses.
He admitted it.
He smiled and openly declared to the entire crowd, the woman is right and Umar is wrong.
The woman is right and Umar is wrong.
Wow. He immediately withdrew his policy decree. He possessed a profound humility. He understood that his authority did not mean he was infallible. The truth was more important than his ego.
That is the ultimate sign of self-security. You can only admit you are wrong publicly if your ego isn't tied to being perfect.
Exactly. He was a servant of the truth, not a master of it.
This style of leadership built a legendary society. But his physical life, the journey of this great man, had to come to an end. How did his story close?
His life came to a violent and tragic end in the year 644 CE. He had ruled for a decade.
What happened?
One morning, he was leading the pre-dawn Fajr prayer in the main mosque in Medina. The mosque was full of people.
Okay.
As he began the prayer, a man suddenly rushed forward from the rows.
Who was it?
It was a Persian slave named Abu Lu'lu'a Firuz. He harbored a personal political grievance against him regarding taxes and the conquest of his homeland.
So it was a planned assassination.
Yes. He had hidden a poisoned, double-bladed dagger in his cloak. While the Caliph was completely defenseless in prayer, the man stabbed him multiple times in the stomach.
Oh, that's a devastating betrayal in a moment of peace. The wound was fatal, correct?
Yes. The poison and the severity of the wounds meant he only had a few days left to live. He was carried back to his modest home, bleeding heavily.
In a moment like that, knowing you are dying, most people would panic. Kings would start trying to secure the throne for their children.
This is the normal instinct for rulers.
What was his focus as he lay dying?
His focus remained exactly where it had been for 10 years, on the stability and welfare of the community. He was terrified that his sudden death would create a power vacuum, leading to civil war and chaos.
He knew he had to design a safe transition of power.
He did.
Did he just write down a decree naming his son as the next caliph? Because that is how dynasties are built?
No, he actively prevented a dynasty.
Really?
People actually suggested that he nominate his capable son Abdullah, but
Yeah.
he firmly refused. He said, "It is enough that one person from the family of Khattab will be questioned by God for the affairs of this community."
He didn't want his son to carry that burden.
Exactly. He explicitly banned his son from running for the leadership. He believed leadership must be based purely on merit, not bloodlines.
So if he doesn't name an heir, how does he prevent chaos?
He instituted an early, brilliant mechanism of democratic consultation. He established a shura.
A shura. How did that system work mechanically?
He selected 6 of the most senior, respected, and capable leaders in the community.
Okay, he brought them together.
He brought them together and essentially told them, the next leader must be one of you. You have 3 days to lock yourselves in a room, consult with each other, and elect the best man among you.
Why a strict 3-day limit?
Because he understood human psychology and politics. If they debated for weeks, factions would form and the society would fracture.
That makes total sense.
He even appointed a trusted commander to guard the door and ensure they made a decision before the deadline. He forced them into collaborative consensus.
He essentially designed a locked-room electoral college to ensure stability.
Exactly. Even with his dying breaths, he was building systems to protect the people.
Did it work?
It did. He passed away shortly after, but his mechanisms, the council elected Uthman ibn Affan as the 3rd caliph smoothly.
Wow.
His death marked the end of an era, but the architecture of his governance survived him.
When you look at everything he left behind, the independent judges, the Diwan registry, the welfare stipends for the poor, the public treasury, the strict accountability for politicians, he laid the foundational blueprints for what we now consider modern ethical government.
He proved that a state can be both powerful and deeply compassionate. He proved that justice is not just an idea, it is a series of policies and daily actions.
It is a breathtaking. Let's summarize the core lessons from the journey of Caliph Umar ibn Khattab. May Allah be with him.
So many lessons.
We started with a man who was rigid, angry, and violently opposed to a new. We saw how the written word of the Quran shattered his cognitive dissonance and transformed his heart.
And we saw him become the ultimate advisor, the distinguisher of truth.
And finally, we saw him shoulder the burden of an expanding empire, not as a king, but as a servant who literally carried food on his own back to feed the hungry.
The lessons are timeless. True authority does not come from intimidating others. It comes from mastering yourself.
Beautifully said.
True power is not measured by the wealth in your treasury, but by your humility before God and your dedication to serving the most vulnerable people in your society.
He proved that the highest leader must also be the most accountable person in the room.
Absolutely.
As we end our discussion today, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought. We spent time unpacking his terrifying sense of accountability, his genuine fear that he would be questioned by God if a stray dog died hungry by a distant riverbank.
It is a level of empathy that is hard to fully grasp.
It is. So here's the question I want you to carry with you. If we held ourselves to even a fraction of the accountability she felt for a starving animal, well, how would that change our own lives?
That's a great question.
How would it change the way you speak to your family when you were tired? How would it change the way you treat an employee who makes a mistake?
It would change everything.
If we applied even 10% of that servant leadership to our own small circles of influence, how much better could we make our own corners of the world?
That is a really powerful challenge to leave us with. It requires us to look inward and elevate our own standards of fairness and care.
It has been a truly inspiring conversation. Thank you for walking us through these historical insights, Emma.
It is my pleasure.
And thank you, the listener, for spending your time with us today on Sanya's English podcast. We hope this deep dive has given you new perspectives on justice, humility, and the true meaning of leadership. Take care of yourselves, take care of others, and keep learning.